Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Shave ice by the beach. A trip to the state fair. And a throwback flick at the local drive-in. They're more than just items to check off the summer bucket list. They're also opportunities to earn 2% daily cash back when you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card now and use in-minutes with Apple Pay. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
One of the best ever in the business, Ray Didinger, joins us. Ray, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for your valuable time.
Always a pleasure, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It was Hall of Fame week. What does that week mean to you, and how much do you reminisce at all about past Hall of Fame weeks and so forth, including your own?
Oh, God, yes. Every year at this time, Hall of Fame weekend takes me back to 1998. When I was out in Canton, Ohio, with Tommy McDonald, who was my boyhood hero, and when he was enshrined that year as part of that very distinguished class, he asked me to be his presenter, and so one of the great thrills of my life was being out in Canton that week and riding in the Hall of Fame parade, riding in the open convertible through the streets of Canton, sitting next to my boyhood hero, and then going to the Hall of Fame and standing on the steps of the Hall of Fame and delivering the speech that presented him for induction. It was then, and it always will be, one of the great highlights of my life. So yeah, every year at this time, it certainly brings back those memories, Steve.
You've written so many words in your career. What did it take to write that speech? Because obviously it came from the heart and there was some passion to it. But did it take a little bit more to write it because you wanted it just right?
Yeah, exactly. You said it. I wanted it exactly just right. I mean, you're only going to have that moment in your life once. You're only going to get to deliver that speech one time. There are no second take. There are no second takes there. There's no. I'll come back tomorrow and maybe I'll get to do it better. You have that one moment on the steps of the Hall of Fame where you're going to be presenting your boyhood hero for enshrinement, and you want to make sure you do it as well as it can be done. And they give you it's changed a little bit now. The presentation now is different than it was back then. Back then it was very traditional. I mean, you physically walked up to the microphone and you delivered your speech and you presented your guy who followed you to the microphone. And now it's all kind of done on video and a lot of it's done on film. But back then it was done very live and in the moment. And Steve was most nervous I've ever been in my life, because I had it all written out and I had it all timed. Back then, a presenter was given 4 minutes. You were told you have 4 minutes to present the enshrinee, and he supposedly had 6 minutes, and it was all very structured, much more so than it is today. When I walked up there with the speech in my hand, even though I had it all in my hand, I was still so nervous, because you can just imagine that moment. I mean, you're standing on the steps of the Hall of Fame. There are literally thousands of people up the slope of the hill, all the way up to the freeway there, watching. You look around to your immediate right and your immediate left, and it's Roger Staubach, it's Deacon Jones, it's Bob Lilly, it's Ray Nitschke, it's Gale Sayers, and all of these guys, the greatest players in the history of the game, are all sitting there looking at you. If you have any sense of appreciation or reverence for the history of pro football, to be standing there in that situation I don't care how cool you are most of the time. You're not cool then, and it was a scary moment, but I got through it. And then the thing that was scary on top of it all was I knew what Tommy was going to do when he got up there, because he had told me he was going to like throw his bust in the air and he was going to pull out the boom box and dance to the Bee Gees and all. So I'm up there delivering my speech to present him, and I'm the only one who knows what he's got planned. So it was nervousness on top of nervousness, Steve. But it all turned out well. It was one of the most memorable Hall of Fame speeches ever. With not mine, his. And people, when I go back to Canton, which I do, I didn't do it this year, but I do many years. People they still talk about it. I mean, they talk about a lot of Hall of Fame speeches, but whenever they're talking about the ones they remember, they always mention Tommy's.
Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Shave ice by the beach. A trip to the state fair. And a throwback flick at the local drive-in. They're more than just items to check off the summer bucket list. They're also opportunities to earn 2% daily cash back when you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card now and use in minutes with Apple Pay. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
And they should. They should, as a matter of fact. Okay, look, you've covered so many and watched so many training camps over the years. With the new CBA rules, how different is camp today compared to even 15 years ago?
Oh, night and day. Night and day. I mean, it's not even the same thing. I mean, I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if I can call it training camp now. I mean, it's almost just extended OTAs. It's not training camp in the sense that training camps used to be, which were truly training camps. I mean, I remember, when I first started covering the Eagles back in my newspaper days, it was 1970, 71, 72. And the Eagles were then training at Albright College in Reading, and it was two-a-days. I mean, routinely. I mean, they came out, they practiced in the morning, they took a lunch break, and then they went out and they practiced again in the afternoon. Went back, had dinner, and then there was meetings at night, and it was endless. And back then, Steve, remember that was the days of 6 preseason games.
Yes.
People, younger people now think 3 preseason games is a lot. Try 6. I mean, by the time you got to the league opener, you felt like you had already played a season. And back then, the teams, they went away to training camp. It isn't like today, like most of the teams, and the Eagles are among them. They practice in their home facility. I mean, back then, you went away to a college, and you were there for 2 months, and you would go away and play an exhibition game in some remote city, and then you'd fly right back and get right back to training camp. You were right back at it the next day, and I mean those are the days when you're talking about the CBA rules and the Players Association rules that limit what coaches could do. Back then, coaches could do whatever they wanted to do, and that was back in the days where you had the real hard-nosed coaches that if they were having a bad practice, I mean, I saw the Eagles coaches just say, take the water in, get the water off the field. They don't deserve it, and the ball boys would just take the water and just take it inside. And the guys would be out there 95 degrees in the afternoon practicing in the sun, and the coach is punishing them by taking the water away. Now, thankfully, the tragedy of Corey Stringer finally made the league step in and end that insanity. But in the 70s, I mean, it was an ordeal that these guys went through, and I mean, they were all tough. I mean, I never saw anybody's training camp that was tougher than Dick Vermeule's. I mean, the early training camps he had with the Eagles were the toughest I ever saw. I mean, he practiced every day, twice a day, 3 hours in the morning, 3.5 hours in the afternoon, full gear, full contact every single day. I mean, they went to camp. There was no limits on how many guys you could bring to camp. So, I mean, they would bring 110 guys to camp, and then just let them battle it out. And the 50 that survived were the 50 that opened the season. But that's pretty much what it amounted to.
I think you just had the right word. the 50 who survived, because the story goes back. Well, it was George Wilson, I think, was the original head coach of the Miami Dolphins when they were an expansion team. And then in 1970, they were able to get Don Shula away from the Colts. And when he goes to Miami, the story goes that he went with 4-a-days. Not 2, not 3, 4-a-days. As you said, Ray, back in the day, they could do pretty much anything they wanted, and that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then look what he did. I mean, look what he built down there, and in no time. I mean, took over what was basically an expansion team, is what it was.
Yes.
And in 2 years, he had him in a Super Bowl. And and that hard work and those brutal training camps was a big part of the reason why they made that kind of progress. I remember Kevin Riley, who was a young linebacker from Villanova, got drafted by the Dolphins. I guess it was like 72, 73. It was when they were world champs. And he got to training camp, and they had this veteran team, and they'd won a couple Super Bowls. But Shula had not backed off. I mean, the training camp was still training camp to Don Shula. And Kevin Riley tells the story that, of course, they're training in Florida. They're training in Miami. It's July. It's August. It's 100 degrees. And he looked across the field, and he saw Manny Fernandez, the great defensive tackle, and he sees Manny doing what Kevin thinks is push-ups in the middle of practice. And he looks over and he sees him doing. He says, "Wow, look at that! Look at that veteran guy. 2 Super Bowl rings, and there he is in the middle of this brutal practice, and he's doing push-ups over there." And then Kevin walks over and he realizes he's not doing push-ups. What he was doing was he was on his hands and knees, licking water out of the grass.
Yeah.
That had, it had rained, as it always does in Miami in the summertime. They had one of these downpours, and there were puddles of water on the practice field. And it was one of the days that Shula had taken the water in. So Manny Fernandez was down on his hands and knees, licking the rainwater out of the grass during the middle of practice. Now, I don't think the Players Association would stand for that today, but that was what training camps were like back then. Shula's may have been a little more extreme than the others, but everybody was pretty much playing out of the same playbook. I know Dick Vermeil was. And listen, I mean, you look back on those, you get those 70s Dolphins guys together, the 17-0 guys, the perfect Dolphins, when they have one of the reunions, and you get them sitting around telling stories. And most of the stories they tell are not about the wins. They aren't about the Super Bowls. They aren't about the celebrations. They're about the training camps.
Yes.
Because that's what they had to survive to get to the Super Bowls.
So now let's fast forward to today. The way it's structured today, and the fact that relatively few veterans play in the not 6, but now 3 preseason games, right? What does that do to the month of September? Because the wins and losses count the same as they do in October and November, but what does that do to the quality of the game and the break-in of the game in September?
Oh, and people always complain about it every year, and prepare yourself for it. You're going to get it again this September. Is at the end of the month, it's when September turns to October, you're going to have all the columnists and all the pundits saying, "Boy, look at the pro football's just not the game that it used to be. Look how sloppy it is. Look how many penalties there are. Games are hard to watch. Blah blah blah." And they're going to start writing off pro football. They're going to say, "Oh, it's not the game that it used to be." Well, sure it is. The only difference is that September now is the equivalent of what preseason used to be. I mean, there's work that has to get done. There's stuff that has to get put in. I mean, systems have to be installed. Guys have to develop timing. And you used to do that in the summer. You used to do that in the preseason games. Well, the way things are now, nobody does that. I mean, you can't practice twice a day. It is literally against the rules. You're limited in what you can do. It's an hour and a half is a lot on the practice field now. You're only limited in how many times a week you can put pads on. And so everybody's going to say, well, no, the tackling is lousy in the league anymore. Well, yeah, of course it's not. Nobody practices it anymore.
Yes.
And so the summer camp, all the work that you used to do, you aren't really able to do. Everything is system install and timing. I'm not saying that's not important, but the physical part of it, and can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really a physical game, isn't it? I mean, it's supposed to be. But the physical part of it, you almost aren't allowed to do that in the summertime now. So you have to start doing it in season. And the first 5-6 weeks looks like what old preseason football used to look like. And then you get to the second half of the year, you get to the November games, and everybody says, games are really picking up. This is what pro football should look like. Well, yeah, but what it is, it's pro football today, but it's vastly different than the game from back in the day. And a lot of it really begins in the summertime. I remember, Dick Vermeil still lives in the Philadelphia area, and Dick still comes down and watches the Eagles practice. And whenever I see him there, I always walk over, and I'm always amused because Dick, he's not going to intercede, and he's not going to go over and tell Nick Sirianni how to run his team. Dick's going to stand off to the side. But he's standing there and he's just grinding his teeth while watching this. And I remember him telling me under his breath last year when he was watching practice, he said, I don't know how you're supposed to get better by working less.
Yeah.
And spoken like a true coach, but I think there is a lot of truth in that. And sort of the old, I don't want to say the old school coaches, but the coaches from that time, they look at training camps today and they just shake their head.
And while I understand it, there is a little bit of a difference. Let's go back to Dick Vermeil's days. A lot of guys, they'd work out in the off-season, but two-a-days actually was part of the conditioning to get ready for the season. Most guys today walk into camp, and if they're not ready to go on day one, they really shouldn't be there because, these guys are actually in shape on day one. At least that's how I judge it. At least on a Penn State football part, I'll say this. When I go into training camp and watch them, they're in shape and set to go, as opposed to two-a-days before when they needed those two-a-days to get into shape. Correct.
And that's a big part of why training camps were different back in the day. Back in, again, I'm going to go back to the 60s, 70s when I sort of got involved in it. Players, it all starts with the money part of it. The players weren't making that much money back then, so they all had to work in the off season.
Yes,
and they all had regular jobs. They were substitute teachers. They were, like Chuck Bednarik sold concrete. Guys were working for beer distributorships. Artie Donovan sold beer and drank beer.
Yes,
and so that's what guys did in the off season. They had full-time jobs, so they weren't able to have these long-time conditioning programs in the off season. They didn't have personal trainers. They weren't working out 5 times a day. They were working men. They were going to the office and doing stuff to help make money because they had to pay their bills. And so, July rolled around and it was time to go to training camp. And I had to go to training camp, and I got to start getting in shape because I haven't really been doing this since the season ended in December. And so training camp took on a whole nature. It was guys knew they were coming in 15, 20 pounds overweight, and they just had to literally work themselves into shape, and they getting on the field twice a day and sweating and grunting and hitting. That's how they did that, to try and get themselves ready to start playing football in September. Well, now, as you said, there are all these camps in the off-season. Guys get maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks off when the season ends, and then they're right back in it with a conditioning program. You got quote-unquote voluntary camps, and then you have the OTAs, and then you have your passing camps, and then there's the rookie camps, and then it runs straight into the regular season, and you never really get unconditioned in today's NFL. So you can have a training camp that is a little less physical. But back in the day, because guys were working in the off season, they came to training camp and it was, time to get myself in shape. And now, you got to show up ready to go because the coaches expect that.
They do. For you, what will be a couple of things that you look for in this Eagles camp that, if they fall right, make a difference in the upcoming season?
Well, the big story here really is the installation of this new offense. And the new offensive coordinator. I got the new offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, has come in. And when you go down and you watch practice now, it bears no resemblance. It bears no resemblance to anything we've seen here in a while. It's all it's a lot of wide zone runs. It's a lot of stretch. It's a lot of toss sweeps. It's a lot of. It's not the blow people off the line kind of blocking that we saw with this team over last couple of years with Saquon Barkley. Now it's a lot of that. That sort of stretch, that kind of stretch blocking. It's not firing out and knocking guys off the ball. It's making the defense move laterally. Kind of the old what started with the Denver Broncos back in the 80s. A lot of that kind of stuff. That's the system that Mannion came up in. That's the system that the new offensive line coaches come up in, and that's what they're teaching and that's what they're running. So it's a big adjustment for this veteran offensive line, and it's a big adjustment for the quarterback because he's now got a guy who has almost exclusively played his whole life. I mean, going back to high school as a shotgun quarterback, is now under center most of the time. So his footwork, his ball handling, his timing, that's all changed. Now, I think from what I can see, and it seems like I think it's going to work. I think the stuff they're putting in here is going to work. I think it's going to fit this offense. I think that Hurts seems very excited about it, but I don't know if they're going to be. Here's the big thing. I don't know if how ready they're going to be to go in week one. I mean, they have an awful lot of stuff. I mean, every part of the offense is changing. Everything is happening up front. Everything is happening at quarterback, the receivers, the runners. It's all different. Everybody's learning a new system. How much of that they will have learned and how much of that they'll have in place and clicking by week one, I don't know. The early part of the season, this offense might look a little sluggish. It might look out of sync because there's so much stuff that has to get worked out. I think over the course of the season, it'll be a healthy thing. I think they'll be a good offensive team. I just don't know if they're going to be a good offensive team in week one. But that's the big story here: is this offense, the new offense, what's it going to look like, and how quickly will these players be able to adapt to it?
Ray, always a pleasure. It's just a fun, easy, informative conversation. Thanks so much for everything, as always.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Steve. Take care. Have a great season.
You too. Thank you so much.